Hey everybody, Fantasy Philosophers back with the newest episode. Uh, Patrick, your host, my co-host Dustin as always, and we do have a special guest, our good friend and league mate Dylan. Today we're going to talk about something that, seemed appropriate considering it's already October, the year's flying by and we're give or take a third of the way through fantasy football. Just want to give a quick shout out to all the supporters. You know who you are. Much love, much appreciated. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and just dive right in. So Dylan, with you being our guest, I'm going to put you on the spot. Trap or treat Jonathan Taylor?
Jonathan Taylor. So, I think I might be a little bit contrarian or maybe a little bit ahead of the curve, but I'm going to go tree. Actually, no, scratch. I'm going trap. Hit him with a curveball. I think it's a trap. And that kind of hurts to say because I like Jonathan Taylor coming out. Thought he had great tape. Everything about his analytics were amazing. He set records at Wisconsin. There's nothing to dislike really about his profile. I know he had some issues with his catching ability out of the backfield, but so far it looked great. But unfortunately, that kind of dovetails with why I think it could be a trap. I don't really like the Colts this year. I think their offense is really not all it's chalked up to be. I think they overpaid Phillip Rivers. I think Phillip Rivers is not a quarterback that scares a defense. I think Phillip Rivers is somebody that will entice the defense to – they'll put 8 men in the box because they're not worried about Rivers going deep. And who's he going to go? He's going to go deep to T.Y. Hilton. He doesn't have a connection with him. T.Y. Hilton's been not to say he was like a big touted, like we're going to draft him early, but even for where you drafted him, you're probably not happy with having T.Y. on your team.
Paris Campbell. On your team.
Yeah, exactly. Any Colt really is not having a great time unless you're Mo Alley Cox. If you got Mo Alley Cox, you probably feel pretty tight. But as far as every other Colt is concerned, it's not really a kind of offense that I guess most of the general fantasy community consensus was out on. But we're about, I guess, a third of the way through the season right now, and we've kind of had our fair share of what Jonathan Taylor as an Indianapolis Colt looks like. And unfortunately, it looks like we might have been fooled a little bit from week one because week one, he had a lot of pass catching stuff going on. And I recall him catching most, if not all of his passes from Phillip Rivers. And we've kind of seen a decline in that over the past 4 weeks. I think he went from maybe having, if my memory serves, he went from 6 or 7 passes week one, and it never reached that top again, at least so far. And there's not really enough meat on the bone as far as the offense itself is concerned to really provide Jonathan Taylor enough opportunities to really be a success as far as, even with the line. Everybody touted the Indianapolis Colts having the best line in football. There's, you could put me back there, I'll get 1,000-yard scrimmage, but I don't think it's really panned out that way. And considering the lack of weapons and utilization as far as if the offense itself feels a little bit one-dimensional. It's like you're either going to throw it short because you're obviously not going deep because your quarterback has what would probably be considered half of an arm at this point, and he's not going to be throwing anywhere deep enough to where you're convincing a corner or safety to really draw back and put a blanket over the backfield. So they're going to put a bunch of people next to the line. They're going to make sure those quick, short slant passes to Mo Alley Cox, Jack Doyle, Zach Pascal, who's probably – I'd say Zach Pascal's the wide receiver one on that team. I'm pretty sure it's not T.Y. Yeah. So at this point, it's a hodgepodge of a bunch of different offensive players that I don't think, considering no training camp, so there's not really much of an identity to the offense beyond just, hope Phillip Rivers can manage a, decent quarterback pass of NFL caliber, or Jonathan Taylor just to be amazing. And I think, he's a rookie. And I think it's a trend you're seeing all across the line with a lot of rookies, running backs that, came in with, the NFL draft. CEH, people drafted him high first round. And there's a lot to be said that maybe he didn't live up to that. J.K. Dobbins, same thing. People touted him as like he's going to take over the backfield. Mark Ingram, that's not going to be a thing. Same thing. There's not really much to show as far as, traction or, I guess, achievement in his career thus far. He's looked all right, but nothing to write home about. And it's unfortunately, much the same with Jonathan Taylor. And I don't know if that's really going to be much something that changes in the short term or even maybe even rest of the season. The Colts don't look like a team that's really going to win a lot. I think Darius Leonard might have even got hurt at some point in their latest game. I don't think it was anything particularly serious, but it just shows a little bit further how much I don't think there's a very fruitful opportunity to be successful as a running back with the Colts right now, just because I think the main three prongs are the defense is not concerned about Phillip Rivers. There's a lack of weapons to really draw defenses away from Jonathan Taylor. And, you know, at the end of the day, Jonathan Taylor's a rookie. He has to get back. He has to get used to the NFL game speed. It's not the same as Wisconsin. You're not playing people that are in college. You're playing full-grown NFL players. And, you know, you can look as good as you want against college players, but once it comes to the NFL, there is a change. There is a transition,
that transition period for sure.
Adjustment
I agree.
period. Yes, you know, you're not going to come in guns blazing. No one usually ever. I mean, Saquon got 2,000 yards rushing as a rookie, but that is, you know, it's Saquon. You know, you can't even talk about Saquon without everybody having a bajillion different takes on it. So, yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor long term, especially like if you're looking dynasty wise, you want him on your team. It looks great. You love having a player like that on your roster. But as far as like output on the rest of the season is concerned, I don't know if I'd really be buying. And in fact, I might even be selling. If you can get something worthwhile as far as like you go to the CMC owner, see if he's really interested in Jonathan Taylor and if the name Helair alone is enough to grab you a CMC for maybe less than you'd have to pay nominally. You know, it's worth a try, and I think it would pan out as far as like if you're maybe 2-2 and looking to rock the boat a little bit, and you might need to figure out a pivot strategy as far as like how your rest of season is concerned. And I think selling Jonathan Taylor isn't a terrible idea, especially if you're looking to actually compete for the rest of the year and, you know, make a little bit of profit off what is, I guess, at this point considered name brand value. So that's where I'm pretty much at with Jonathan Taylor at this point.
Good points. This will be an interesting discussion for sure. Dustin, real curious to hear your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor. Trap or treat?
I think if you are wanting to try and pry him away from the owner who has him now, I think it's a trap. For me, he's a hold. I've got him in a couple places, and I'm not looking to sell. The reason is he's a middling RB2, right? He's RB16 in PPR. And that's exactly what I drafted him to be, and anything more is upside, right? I can totally understand how you are freaking out if you drafted him to be your RB2. I did not do that anywhere. Everywhere I have him, he's my RB3. So I'm perfectly content with what he's producing, where I have him. And I think he reminds me a lot of Miles Sanders last year. Miles Sanders came in, and in the early part of the year, we were like, yeah, the Eagles spent a pick on this guy. His vision is terrible. His footwork's not great.
They're saying
he's adjusting to the game
speed right now. A lot of people online are saying he has vision issues, and he's not good at reading openings.
He's adjusting to the scheme. He's adjusting to the speed of the game. I'm pretty sure that we're going to see a late end of season surge from him, similar to what we saw from Sanders when he came back at the end of the year last year. That's what I feel is coming. Now, I don't know that it's going to be to the same ceiling as Sanders was, because it's just a different offense. You hit the nail on the head, man. They're not scoring a ton of points. Pretty sure they have the top fantasy defense right now, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not in a ton of leagues that have team defense.
I believe last I checked, if they're not one, they're up there.
They're up there, yeah. So their defense is balling. Yeah, their defense is balling. They don't have to score a ton of points. But you're right. Nobody's scared of Phillip Rivers' arm. Nobody's scared of T.Y. T.Y. has been a pain in my butt for years as a Texans fan, especially at home. I hate to say it, but he looks old and not good anymore. I mean, obviously he'd run circles around me, but comparatively to NFL receivers, he just doesn't look good anymore. So no one's scared of T.Y. down the field. And so I'm not trying to acquire Taylor anywhere. Everywhere I have him, I'm holding him because he's my RB3 putting up RB16 numbers. So I'm happy with what I've got, and I'm hoping an end-of-year surge can kind of push me over the edge as far as winning a championship and a playoff run.
Nice.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Well said.
Mine will be short and sweet because I know I certainly touched on Jonathan Taylor in our previous video. But just to echo what both Dylan and Dustin have shared thus far, the defenses simply do not respect Phillip Rivers passing the ball. They just don't. So with that being said, they're going to focus in on Jonathan Taylor and make that their top priority when it comes to the Colts offense. Now, the Colts do have a good line, but here's the issue. If you're just stacking up the box with professional football players in the NFL who are ready to attack Jonathan Taylor, who's, I believe, a 21-year-old rookie.
Yep.
I'm betting on the defense as of now. Until there is a reason for defenses to actually show some kind of respect to the pass game, I don't see Jonathan Taylor as any more than a running back 2 on a weekly basis. And
what he is.
I will say, seeing how much Nyheim Hines and even Jordan Wilkins, how many snaps they saw in this most recent game in week 4, that made me really wonder, does the coaching staff think that he is just fully ready to take over as the workhorse that we all expected? Maybe not yet, and we haven't seen any big explosive plays from him either, which
week 1 we did. We saw some.
Yeah. Week 1, it looked great. Like, if you got what you want, if week 1 was the norm and that's what you could expect every week, I don't think anybody really would complain because you'd have a pass-catching running back that you never even anticipated getting, because I don't think a lot of people that initially drafted Jonathan Taylor were thinking, oh, my God, I'm going to get the next Aaron Jones. But based off game 1,
to be honest, I guess in conclusion, because – I didn't necessarily view him this way. I've heard people compare Jonathan Taylor to both Saquon and Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think he's on that level. I do think he will be a productive running back in the NFL moving forward. But, since we're focusing on fantasy redraft leagues as far as this year's concerned, if there's someone in your league that is willing to pay that premium for that, prospect name, all the hype that's been around him, and essentially give you what they're hoping he returns value for, absolutely. But similar to Dustin, it's a hold. I'm not going to just look to move him. But if someone feels that now is a quote-unquote buy low opportunity, of course, it depends on what they send. But I'm certainly open to negotiating offers. Unfortunately, I don't own them anywhere, so I'll let both Dylan and Dustin do that and let me know how it goes. But that's that about Jonathan Taylor in a nutshell.
Let me ask you this: if you were offered Kareem Hunt for Jonathan Taylor, would you do it?
Yes.
Immediately?
Immediately.
That's what I figured. Per PFF, it looks like, and this is PPR scoring, it looks like Jonathan Taylor is below Kareem Hunt. Not by a lot. But Jonathan Taylor's 26, Kareem Hunt is 15, and that's more than likely going to go up.
And that's with Kareem Hunt getting limited work with Chubb. Unfortunately, with the Chubb injury, and I'm kicking myself because I ironically traded Hunt away in 2 different leagues just prior to this weekend. Go figure. Hunt is absolutely locked as a top 10. You could argue higher. I mean, everyone talks about the regression and he can't continue to be as efficient, but he continues to be efficient, and he's a very big threat in the receiving game. Those other people that got the ball that I didn't even know were on the team, Dearness
Johnson and
they
Dontrell
did
Hilliard.
look good, but that Dallas Cowboys defense, as much as it kills me to say, they honestly look like they might be the worst defense in the league. Man, that hurts to say. Anywho, yeah, it's a tough situation all around. But yeah, if Jonathan Taylor, Kareem Hunt pops up, I'm not thinking twice. I might double check to make sure there wasn't an injury at practice that I don't know about. But after that, it's accept all day, every day.
Right then and there.
Yeah, I think so too. Kareem Hunt's consistently graded as, one of PFF's better running backs by a lot of metrics. So.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Kareem Hunt has done it before. That's the thing. It's like this isn't something that just came out of nowhere. Like,
for sure,
the guy's done it before, and he's continuing.
And they're using him as a dang receiver right now. Yeah, sometimes.
I mean, he's elite, man. He's elite.
Yeah.
Just to keep us going, and just to kind of get a little rotation going, I'm gonna come at you this time, Dustin.
All right.
Trick or trap, Clyde Edwards-Helair?
This is a hard one for me because
really is.
There's this allure of the Chiefs' offense. The ceiling is the sky. I mean, it's limitless ceiling. I would not be surprised if, he has in the near future a 50-point game. Is it going to happen this year? I'm not sure. The biggest concern for me with him is the red zone usage. It looks like if he's going to score a touchdown, it's going to have to be from about 25 yards or more out. But based on what I've seen, he is way more than capable of doing that multiple times in a game, especially against low-tier defenses. CEH is a great running back, but I think always and forever that offense is going to flow through Mahomes. So I think this one is as much as this is kind of a cop-out, it depends for me. Is the owner frustrated with his performance? Can I flip like Joe Mixon for him? If I can flip Joe Mixon for CEH, smash accept all day.
Wow. Okay.
But it's going to come down to what I can acquire him for, because I'm not willing to pay that first round price that he was probably drafted at. I'm willing to probably pay more of a mid-second price, someone along the lines of like where Joe Mixon maybe was being drafted. I saw Joe Mixon fall on a lot of drafts. Maybe that's not a good example. Maybe like a Kenyon Drake. He was up there sometimes too. I guess it depends on who you draft with, but someone along that.
Running back heavy, so all running backs were up there.
Yeah. Yeah. So someone like that, I'd be willing to flip for him. I really don't like to do position for position trades typically when it's just one for one.
The lateral stuff is
Mixon though. I would 100% flip Mixon for CEH today if I had a share of either one of them. I don't have them anywhere in 9 leagues, but so I guess that makes him a treat for me, but only a small treat, I guess. A fun size treat.
Much like himself.
Exactly, just like his stature.
So you say that you don't like doing 1-for-1 trades running back wise. Who do you think is commensurate value for a CEH right now if you were shopping for a wide receiver? Say you had Julio and Devontae, and you did like zero RB or something to that degree, and you're trying to keep your ship afloat. What would you be willing to give up wide receiver wise to acquire a CEH?
I think I would send probably like
Adam Thielen?
Ooh, I was kind of fading Thielen earlier in the year, but I am on board the Thielen train right now. So I don't know that I would. I know they're not throwing the ball much, but Justin Jefferson isn't going to be Justin Jefferson every week until next year, I don't think, and Thielen's the guy. So I think Thielen's a little pricey for me. I was thinking more like Kenny Golladay.
I think that's pretty solid value. If someone came at me and they wanted CEH for my Kenny Golladay, yeah, I don't even know if I need to be that running back heavy or running back depleted to be open to that trade, just because, I don't think that I'm not one to buy the Lions this year. I don't think Patricia's going to coach them to any sort of real success.
Yes,
but
it's not looking great.
It's not. I mean,
Stafford looks all right.
Galladay's probably going to score 8 or more touchdowns, I would say.
That's true. I mean, there's definitely nothing saying that he won't. It's just I would, especially regarding running back, the landscape of running back right now is
it's brutal.
It seems like if you had any sort of luck in the draft as far as positioning is concerned, you're not looking great. If you paid Saquon at pick 2, screw. If you pick CMC at 1, which is, no one thinks that's bad process, but apparently it was, because it panned out very badly. And same with I'm surprised we haven't seen Dalvin Cook go down. I mean, Dalvin Cook's looked amazing so far, but I've always been of the notion that I feel like there's always an injury with Dalvin Cook lingering right around the corner. So I've always been hesitant to really invest in him at that price range. But, so I think
But do you think the Dalvin Cook owner would give up Dalvin for CEH now in a redraft? I don't
think so. I think Dalvin's done well enough right now that I don't think that Dalvin Cook – I think I would be open to get but you wouldn't want to do him one for – I'd need something probably a little more on top of CEH, maybe a Will Fuller, something to that degree, just kind of meet the delta in the middle, just because I'm not really buying the Vikings. I don't think the Vikings are very good. I don't think they're a really well-positioned team for a running back to flourish, just because I think they're going to be down a lot. I think that defense – Daniil Hunter – his trainer wants him to not play anymore.
That's why I'm high on Thielen.
See, that's what I'm saying. I was out on Thielen earlier because I was like, man, the Vikings are bad. They're a bad football team. But just because they're a bad football team doesn't mean they're a bad fantasy team. They very well might be a great fantasy team if they're very bad. And with the defense the way it looks, with Harrison Smith getting, ejected for targeting apparently, and them having injuries across the board on the defensive side, it's just, I think Vikings players right now, if you're a wide receiver, the wheels are up. If you're Dalvin Cook, I think we might have seen the best of Dalvin Cook so far this season. I don't know if it gets any better from here. If I was a Dalvin Cook owner, I'd be fielding offers for maybe someone like a CEH, or even, I don't know, maybe you could do, you could probably fill a bit. If you needed wide receiver help, you could go DeAndre Swift and Golladay and get the stack maybe for a Dalvin. I think that's kind of a maybe a way to pivot if you're kind of not trying to stay on the Vikings shit for too long.
Considering where Dalvin was drafted and how he's producing, I mean, I just don't know why anyone would trade him.
His average targets per game are down 2 per game from last year. But he's still producing well. But Dylan makes a great point. If they're in negative game scripts and he's not seeing targets, that's a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, well, I guess just to hit my thoughts on CEH real quick, and I do own CEH in a redraft league. Go figure. And I hate to do this. It depends. But the thing is, in all honesty, it's a treat either way. And what I mean by it depends is, what is your record right now? What is the record of whoever's in first place right now? If there's multiple undefeated teams and you're 1-3, 4-0, I'm looking to trade them because I have to do something. I can't wait around for it. But if I've got a couple wins, there aren't multiple teams pulling away from the pack, honestly, I think as time progresses, he's going to be used more and more. And I just, again, a rookie with if you want to call it a preseason, a pandemic off season at that, things are only going to get better for him. I'm not quite sure why he's been coming off the field in red zone opportunities. That is the one major concern, but assuming all of our listeners are playing PPR, as long as I don't need to make a move now to have a chance to compete, I'm holding him. Unless I just get an overwhelming offer where someone's obviously giving me more than what he's done thus far, then sure. But other than that, I'm not looking at any of these lateral moves. I mean, that's the most explosive offense in the league. It's funny because we're disappointed and he's running back 12. It's like a rookie running back, 12 overall, and everyone's disappointed, and we're 4 games in.
And that's like the highest you should have drafted him anyway, really, unless, I mean, I know you took him higher than that in that one league, but man, that league just gobbles up running backs like crazy.
Yeah, I did, and it was a risk, I admit. It was something I thought really hard about, but I did take him in the first. I expected the PPR aspect to pay off a little quicker, to be very honest. I believe there's only really been one game where he's had a handful or more receptions, but I think that's coming too. I think a lot of it is just him getting comfortable in the system. You can't put too much pressure on I don't care, first round draft pick or not, with the off season that was at hand. There's gonna be some building up, and he hasn't been fully unleashed. I think it's safe to say that. We've already touched on the Chiefs' schedule moving forward. I guess the only real concern for me is they just don't lose a game, and then possibly just out of precaution limit his snaps once you hit the playoffs, which would be terrible. But then again, you got to make the playoffs to have a chance to win. So, I guess it depends on how far you want to look into it. But I think I think better things are coming sooner than later for CEH personally.
All right. Well, it depends. And Dylan, what did you say? Did you say a trap or a treat?
I'm actually, I think I'm a little bit more higher on CEH than I guess probably and it depends would be concerned. I think it's looked great as far as like what a rookie running back would look like. I think, it sucks that he's not getting goal line work as much as you'd want. He's a smaller statured running back. I mean, he's like what, 5'7", 5'8". He's like a little bowling ball, but there might be guys better suited to play between the tackles, at least as far as goal line carries are concerned. And it's like Pat said, yeah, they've got other running backs on the roster. They've got Darwin Thompson. They've got Darrell Williams. They might just trust them a little bit more closer to the goal line right now than they do CEH. And I think CEH has the luxury of being a rookie in a really good system like that, where he doesn't really need to be the focal point of the offense yet. He's kind of got a red carpet rolled out for him as far as like ramping up his role in the offense is concerned, because nobody's asking him to taking on a huge workload as far as like being the focal point of the offense is concerned. You can work it through Pat Mahomes. You can give it to Tyreek or Travis Kelce, and then you can really just use CEH situationally almost, to where you can find
good
instances
do
where
you draft a running back in the first round to use them situationally?
I think if it's with the Chiefs, I think
it was a luxury pick.
It's a luxury pick, and I think if you drafted
it
him in the first round, I think it conveys a little bit of maybe getting lost in the luster of a luxury pick itself, because if you take him in the first, I would anticipate that if you're not getting at least 20 points out of him every week, you're probably going to be disappointed. But I think it is also probably not bad considering he's been, short of like a James Robinson, probably the best rookie running back that is active right now, just from especially from a PP. If it's full PPR, I would be stoked to have CEH on my roster because.
So, real quick, each of y'all, yeah. CEH or Jonathan Taylor the rest of the way?
I want CEH.
CEH or Mixon rest of the way?
CEH. I already answered that.
Actually, yeah, I'm gonna go CEH.
Dude, Mixon's schedule coming up is brutal. We can talk about him coming up, but it's ugly.
Okay, I was just curious. I wanted to just make sure I had a firm grasp on where we were at there. So
value check.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, man. I we're all in a league against each other. So hey, just checking in. Checking in.
No. Let me ask you this: with Devontae Adams coming back, would you do Aaron Jones or CEH rest of the season?
Oh man, give me Aaron Jones.
Redraft Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
Redraft. Yeah, you got to.
Yeah, I don't think Devontae coming back is enough of a target valve to really mess up the rhythm that Aaron Jones got going. If anything, Jamal Williams might be coming in and maybe siphoning off a little bit more touches than people thought, but apparently that's not an issue.
We heard that. We heard that debate last year, so I'm not going there again.
He looks good. Jamal Williams looks pretty good this season. I got to hand it.
He's always looked good. When hasn't he looked good? He's one of the best. He's one of the best pass blockers at the running back position in the entire NFL. I mean, the guy's getting on the field. Period. It doesn't matter. Like,
yeah, he's a good pass catcher too.
When you protect the quarterback as well as he does, you're getting snaps in the story.
I don't know why you would give the ball to him.
Aaron Jones is on a different level at this point.
He's so good money.
He's like the most efficient running back in the league right now, which is a whole other discussion.
I'm still pulling my hair out over the CMC Aaron Jones trade I made in our other league just because it seemed like
you'll be all right. Well, speaking of, great segue. So,
yeah.
Speaking of Dylan, trap or treat Mike Davis.
This is rest of season?
Rest of season. Rest of season.
I have not a lot of evidence to work off of because I don't think, I haven't seen CMC in a situation like this before, short of maybe his rookie season when I think he was ceding snaps to I'm trying to remember who it was.
Was it D'Angelo Williams? Was it D. Willie?
I think it might have been D'Angelo Williams, unless it's somebody else that comes to mind.
Jonathan Stewart.
Yeah, that's who it was. I knew it was a Jonathan. It was another Jonathan. But yeah, I think with CMC coming back, I don't hate Mike Davis, at least for maybe the next handful of weeks. I think if the Panthers are smart, which I think they've so far, Matt Rule, the offense, the organization themselves, I don't think they've done a lot to convey their dumb as far as like your average Bear NFL team is concerned. So I don't think there's, especially considering the way Mike Davis has performed so far, I don't think there's a lot of impetus to rush CMC back. The Panthers have won their past 2 games. Teddy's looked really good. I think he's helped, bring a light to Robbie Anderson that maybe wasn't there before with the Jets. I think the Panthers look pretty good for a team that, a lot of people talked about. This team's going to tank. Their defense is trash. The offense is not going to congeal well together. I think short of maybe, people that drafted DJ Moore high, I think the offense itself looks pretty robust. I think there's a lot to like as far as like Matt Rule's play calling is concerned, as well as Teddy's handling the offense itself. So I think drawing this back to Mike Davis, if you have him right now, I think you're stoked. And I think, you're going to probably try your damnedest to garner some value out of Mike Davis from the CMC owners, see if you can get a treasure trove of stuff from the CMC. It probably would have been a better play to do this initially if you wanted to really get reap your reward over the CMC owner. Because I think right now there's the notion that he might be back in a week or two, so the urge to really overpay to get Mike Davis might not be as strong now. But I do think that, considering the way Mike Davis has played and the way I don't think the Panthers are going to rush CMC back into the offense, especially as a focal point, even maybe from the rest of the season, I wouldn't be shocked if there is some sort of 1-2 punch as far as Mike Davis is concerned, because one, he's earned it with the way he's played. I don't think there's been a week so far where Mike Davis has been the main running back for the Panthers, where he hasn't at least been running back 2. So I think at this point, I think it's smart all around to keep Mike Davis involved, both from a fantasy football perspective as well as from a real football perspective for the Panthers, just because I think they gave Christian McCaffrey a lot of money, probably a lot more money than a lot of other organizations would have felt comfortable giving a running back, but he's the face of the organization. And I think if anything were to happen to him to an extent where a Saquon, disastrous type injury comes back because they rushed him back, they used him when they didn't need to,
So it sounds like
I think if you're not a
CMC owner, do you think Mike Davis is a treat to keep the rest of the way? Or is he someone that you think it's a trap and you need to find someone, likely the CMC owner, to give you something before he's worth next to nothing?
I think it depends on your expectations of what you're going to get. I don't know if you can reasonably.
Are you going to start him in your?
So let's say you're going to consider starting Mike Davis, and obviously you're probably going to start him while CMC's out. When he comes back, do you still consider starting him? I don't know. I would probably, as opposed to where he might be a running back 2 on your roster right now, maybe running back 1 if you're really unlucky, like some individuals probably would be. I think once CMC comes back, I think I'd feel more comfortable starting him as a flex, seeing how the first 2 weeks of action go, see what the snap count looks like. I think there's good process to have him as, a flex or maybe even low end running back 2 for those first couple of weeks, even when CMC's back, because I don't see a lot of reason for them to really push the needle with CMC. If the Panthers were 1-4 or, something to that degree, just losing out, just looking terrible, I think there'd be more impetus maybe to just get him back on the field just so the fans don't get mad at the new regime this early in their tenure. But I think right now I don't see CMC really being rushed back, which I think gives Mike Davis a little bit more value rest of season than one would anticipate. So if you got him, I'd probably hold unless you have a really – if you have an offer – if someone offered me Jerick McKinnon for Mike Davis, I might hold. I don't know if I'd take Jerick McKinnon right now over Mike Davis just because I know Raheem's coming back. I know they've still got Jeff Wilson. They've got JaMychal Hasty. It's, I think Mike Davis has both inherent value and just optic value. So I think I would probably hold Mike Davis right now unless I got an offer that not knocked my socks off, but, made sense for my roster. And, if I got something that, Mike Davis will be wanted, especially if he continues playing.
It sounds more or less like, in your eyes, Mike Davis is at the very least flex
Yeah, I think you hold if you get running back 2 value for Mike Davis right now. I think if someone would you want Mike Davis or Chris Carson right now? I think
Chris
if someone
Carson.
Obviously 100%. Chris Carson. Would you want James Conner or Mike Davis? James Conner.
But I think you go. But James Conner.
Let me ask you this: would you want Mike Davis or Kenyon Drake right now?
Kenyon Drake.
Really?
Here's the thing, what's really and sorry, Dustin, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Chris Carson and
I
James
just have
Conner
a couple of real quick points. So it's very strange that the 2 games CMC misses, the Panthers win. Both of them. Isn't that odd?
I think
a little bit. Anyway, here's the thing. Mike Davis has certainly earned snaps. And as an organization, it's certainly wise to manage CMC's workload going forward. He can't continue doing what he's done over the past couple of years as far as volume's concerned. He just can't. So do I think Mike Davis will have some games where he might pop off for some points? Sure. But I'm not going to ever feel confident starting him once CMC returns. So it's kind of a question you got to ask. Do I feel CMC is on the brink of returning within the next week or two? Or do I feel the Panthers are just going to, be patient, keep him out however long, possibly more than the initial 6 week? How are you feeling about that? Because with a player like that, and he goes down, and then you win not one but 2 games without him, I'm not in any rush to bring him back. But I can't imagine that you could keep a player like of his caliber that wants to play off the field for that long. So if I have CMC, I'm absolutely holding. If I don't have CMC, I'm going directly to the CMC owner. But I'm making it very clear that, they're going to have to offer something that's of flex value for me to accept. So I wouldn't want to keep him, but if no one was willing to, offer what essentially he should be worth, at least in the short term, then I could understand holding. But I would certainly try really hard to move him while his value is this high. I just can't imagine it being any higher.
Who would you move him for right now? Would you move him for, I think the range that I think might be worth trying out? I think you could do a Le'Veon Bell who's on IR, but I think
I
it's
would
going to come back
absolutely do
fine.
that. As much as I hate Le'Veon Bell, I would do that immediately. Yeah.
I think that's pretty choice because
volume. It's just the guaranteed volume. That's it.
Yeah, and the same with a Devin Singletary or maybe even a Raheem. I think I could see Raheem coming back, picking up right where he left off, considering the break he got. If you can trade a Mike Davis for a Raheem, that seems like a play, especially considering there's going to be a really muddy backfield situation once Raheem comes back.
If you pull that off, I want to play in that league.
Well,
Dustin, sorry, Dylan and I kind of took over there. Our apologies.
No, I mean,
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so let's appreciate CMC for a second, right? Dude hasn't played since week 2 and is still the RB19 in PPR. That's incredible. So that being said, when he's back, if they have a shot at making the playoffs, it still looks like, which they're 2-2, right? So 2-2, CMC comes. Let's say they go 1-1, so now they're 3-3. You're in the playoff hunt. If he can come back, there's absolutely no way you keep him off the field. So yeah, Mike Davis might see some carries, and I've liked Mike Davis historically. I liked him when he was the Bears. I've been let down by Mike Davis. It is what it is. I've always kind of liked what he offers as a running back, but there's no way that I feel confident starting him if I know that CMC is going to be on the field. Even if Matt Rule comes out and says they'll be splitting snaps, because they're not going to tell us what the percentage is beforehand. If I hear that, I don't want to play Mike Davis because I'm not feeling good about it. Because they'll be splitting snaps. Maybe that means Mike Davis gets 10% of the snaps instead of 5. But I don't like that. So I am confident starting Mike Davis one more week. They play Atlanta next. So woohoo. After that, it's Chicago, Indy. They get Atlanta again, but I expect McCaffrey to start, to be working his way back by then. So I agree. If you can move him for a flex play, maybe
move him now. I think
move him now. If you haven't moved him yet,
before this week's games, move him. His value just won't be any higher.
Every week that passes, his value drops more and more and more. But if I could get if I could even get Darius Slayton, I would take Darius Slayton for Mike Davis right now, straight up, because Darius Slayton, we can talk about him later maybe, but he's had a brutal schedule. It's looking a lot better starting this week. They get Dallas. So something like that. If I'm hurting at receiver and that's what I'm looking to do in redraft. I don't actually have Mike Davis in redraft. I've only had him in a dynasty, and I did flip him for some draft capital, but
good stuff. Good stuff.
That's where I'm at. I'm moving
I guess
at all costs.
Just to kind of conclude,
I'd rather get something than nothing.
Yeah, for sure. Just to conclude on Mike Davis, real quick, who would you rather have rest of season, Mike Davis or Joshua Kelly?
Joshua Kelly, because I know that Joshua Kelly is going to have value even when sometimes even when Austin Eckler comes back, because we've seen it. But when Christian McCaffrey is fully healthy, Mike Davis is not relevant.
Yeah, I'd probably do the same.
You on board with that?
If I could pivot to Josh Kelly, I don't think that's a terrible, especially with, I think the Eckler injury is probably going to leave a little bit worse than people anticipate. I don't see him coming back for at least like six or so weeks at least. Yeah, I think Josh Kelly's a good pivot. It'll probably get you essentially the same value and output that Mike Davis got you, especially with Herbert playing good. I think Herbert is getting better and better every week. I think he's a gamer. I think he's the sort of dude that will open an offense and allow someone to flourish, and they won't have defenders stacking a box on him because they're going to be worried about Keenan Allen. They're going to be worried. Mike Williams get hurt walking out of his front door, but they're going to be worried about him anyway because he will gel well with Justin Herbert's play style. He slings the ball.
So speaking of Justin Herbert's play style, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was perfect for me to chime in. My apologies. Justin Jackson. Would you take him over Mike Davis?
That's a good question.
He appears to be the better receiving back thus far. I mean, we haven't seen enough from Joshua Kelly to know for sure, but just a thought. I mean,
I think they both are worth pivoting towards just because I think the fantasy value of Mike Davis will be where the real life value of Mike Davis is at now once CMC comes back. So he's really valuable in fantasy now, but once CMC comes back, he's not going to be as valuable. But it'll be a lot more valuable as far as just his backup role is concerned, especially with Reggie Bonifant he went on IR. So I think there's only one other running back on the roster besides Mike Davis that's active right now. So
I hadn't heard about Bonifant. Interesting.
Yeah, there's no one that's going to be worth anything fantasy-wise, but I think the depleted running back core is definitely enough to waiver consideration. And, speaking of, I guess, depleted stuff, I was thinking as far as, like, someone that hasn't really been talked about a lot as far as, like, stuff happening because he hasn't played a lot. Pat, I was thinking, what are your thoughts on A.J. Brown rest of season? Do you think he comes back and picks up where he left off? Do you think Jonnu is going to be kind of the one for a little bit? Do you think there's a risk to maybe even coming to A.J. Brown coming back, maybe re-aggravating that bone bruise in his knee? And, the Titans are also having to deal with a COVID outbreak. So there might not even be a lot of organizational fluidity right now as far as just practice is concerned. Physical therapy.
Is he getting treatment?
Yeah. So I think A.J. Brown is he's somebody that's probably going to be a little bit divisive for most folks, especially considering the offense he plays in and the quarterback he's got and just, the general offensive philosophy the Titans play with. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's pretty obvious to say this is likely the lowest you'll be able to buy A.J. Brown. But with that being said, when it comes to redraft, Corey Davis, as crazy it is to say, Corey Davis has looked pretty good. He's looked pretty good, and if someone was just selling A.J. Brown for the extreme low, then maybe if I was hurting at wide receiver, I think this is a trap. I do. Derrick Henry, every season when the weather starts getting cold outside, that motherfucker will start running over folks like nothing.
Choo, choo.
Every season. So I'm calling it now. He's off to his normal slow start. We saw what happened. I traded him away last season because I was like,
I just traded for him.
I was super paranoid because it was like the only thing he ever did was if they had a 1 yard to goal play, he just fell for it in the end zone. So I got rid of him. You know, weather started getting cold and he started just punishing people that even attempted to look like they wanted to think about tackling him, you know? So that run game, the fact that Jonnu Smith has just looked real nice. Possibly the emergence of Corey Davis, as crazy as that sounds.
Third year breakout?
I mean, I guess just to sum it up, I'm not paying what people paid on draft day for A.J. Brown at all. I'm not.
Really?
Not in redraft, no.
I mean, I tend to agree. For redraft, like, my goal is to win. I just read I just pulled him up because I was like, is he playing this week if they play? Vrabel said there's a chance Brown is cleared to practice Wednesday, and that would be, you know, in a limited fashion. So he's, I think, still 2, maybe 3 weeks out from playing. And I'm sorry, but the way this year is going, with the injuries, you know, I've kind of been lucky to avoid them. I got hammered by them this past week, man. You know, so the way that this year's going, I don't think I'm willing to really sit on a player that could miss two or three more weeks. I'm out. I don't.
Really?
It's a trap for me.
And real
I
quick,
think that really hamstrings your chance at making. I mean, maybe if you're 4-0, I know there's some teams out there. I have a dynasty team that's 4-0 that I'm loving, but redraft, man. You know, if you made it to 4-0, maybe you can pull a maneuver off like this. But I think for the vast majority of people, it's just a bad idea.
I think I kind of agree to a degree with both of you guys. I think for right now, it looks like a trap. But I'm actually, funny enough, you mentioned teams that are 4-0 that could make a trade. I actually made, in the Megalo Bowl, I'm 4-0 right now, and I actually made a trade with Matt, I think about 2 weeks ago. I gave him Thielen, Cook, Hawk.
Dalvin Cook?
And yes, Dalvin Cook. I gave him Thielen, Fuller, Cook, and Hawk, and got Jonnu, A.J. Brown, and Joe Mixon. And at first, people were like, whoa, you kind of overpaid. You gave a lot for some, like the Titans. And
I don't
Say
love
those
it.
names one more time. Sorry.
I gave him Will Fuller because Matt had a really depleted wide receiver core. I'm 4-0. My team's really great. Yada, yada, yada. I gave him Will Fuller, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, and T.J. Hawkinson for Jonnu Smith, A.J. Brown, and Joe Mixon. The reason being, my wide receiver core was really set in that league, and I assumed it's going to be a slow return for A.J. Brown. I don't foresee him being rushed back. I think they will play it a little more cautious, especially considering the sort of season we're in. But I think A.J. Brown is going to have actually a great rest of season. I don't really foresee there to be a lapse as far as output is concerned from A.J. Brown's standpoint. Like I say, we're going to have week 5 starting. I think by week 7 or 8, I think A.J. Brown will be right back where he left off last season. I could see him coming back. And, you know, I obviously think Jonnu's emergence will take a little bit of target share away, but I don't think it's enough to be a considerable amount. And same with Corey. I think Corey Davis has performed admirably in A.J. Brown's absence. I think I don't know if I'd say Corey Davis has performed well enough to make anybody feel good about taking him where they took him in the draft, but he'd probably have to grow wings and just be, you know, put the team on his back to ever have that feel good again. So I think for right now, the Titans have kind of in the same way the Panthers have performed without CMC. I think the Titans have played all right. I don't think there's been really any cause for concern or any real need to rush him back. I think they haven't just blown opponents out of the water. But I think for right now, they've been winning games. Right now, are the Titans, are they 3-1 or are they 4-0?
I think
They're
I think they're 4. No, they're 3-0.
They're 3-0. Okay,
because their game 4 got rescheduled. Remember?
That's right. Yeah, and I think that kind of bears a little bit of fruit on it as well. It gives them a little bit more opportunity to just let AJ Brown rest. If he does come back this week, I think it'll be probably in limited fashion. I don't know if I'd play him this week right now, and I probably, I still feel good about that trade I made. I do think Bill O'Brien getting fired changes the dynamic of that Will Fuller aspect of the trade. I might not feel as good about it now as I did prior, but I do have enough faith in the Titans offense to be enough of a driving force, and I think the game script will fare well. I think it's much like you said, Pat. I think the winter season will be approaching. Teams are going to have to respect Derrick Henry, and he's going to come into midseason form, and he's going to just run roughshod over defensive linemen, and eventually it's going to get to the point where they're going to have to stack the box because they have to stop Derrick Henry somehow. And then once that time comes, I think it will time up very nicely with A.J. Brown fully getting rested, ready to roll back in the offense. And I think he performs – I'd be willing to say that I think A.J. Brown rest of season will outperform people like Devontae Parker. I think he will outperform people like –
No.
That's a
I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. I could see him outperform.
Spicy.
I could see it even spot. I could see him outperforming DJ Chark. Give AJ Brown. Once you see AJ Brown get back and play healthy, and I'd be the old AJ Brown.
Are we talking points per game? I'm assuming because
yes.
I can't imagine him catching up these people after missing multiple games unless
maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Like combined points.
Currently, he has.
I would say rest of season. I'd say
like when he comes back, he's
Devontae Parker looks like rest of season. I'd probably take AJ Brown just because I think, whereas with a Devontae Parker, you're probably going to get low to mid wide receiver 2 output on most weeks. I think AJ Brown will put wide receiver 1 numbers on the board once he's back fully healthy. I think he is enough of a just natural talent. I think the Titans are going to have a solid enough offense to where he can play well, and he's not going to have the focus of the defense on him when he gets back. And I think it's going to be a really solid opportunity for him to come back and do some real damage in that offense. And I think they're a playoff contender. I think they're just where they were last season, and I think there's enough, fruit with them berries to just make something happen on offense. And yeah, I think he's a strong treat. I think it's very easy to look like it's a trap, but he's a smorgasbord as far as treats are concerned. I'm buying give me all the AJ Brown dynasty or redraft. I think he's going to come back and kill it. But this could very well blow up in my face. I've had a lot of these decisions blow up in my face lately.
It's all good, man. I mean, I don't agree, but go with what you feel.
Yeah. And last thing here before we move on to our next player, and probably going to be our last guy that we talk about. We are coming up on an hour here. Last thing that I just wanted to throw in there, my concern, Patrick, you talked about it. As we approach the playoffs, the Titans and Derrick Henry really get that train rolling, which means a lot more rush attempts and a lot less pass attempts. So my concern was just that they're throwing a lot right now, 43 attempts, 24, 37 attempts in the first 3 games. I don't expect that to continue, but, he didn't need volume per se to do it last year. I don't want to sit on the weeks, and I'm scared of the injury. So
yeah, talent's there. It's just for a second-year wide receiver coming off an injury who plays in a run-heavy offense
with other people emerging, it just doesn't feel good for redraft.
And, if anything, I wish I could say, well, he's obviously a red zone threat, but it looks like Jonnu Smith has that locked down up to this point. It could happen. I'm out.
That's fair.
Based on where he went in drafts. If someone's selling him for the low, then I'm gonna reconsider. But
I think it'd be that. Yeah. It's more of a look. If you can make it, if it works for your roster and it doesn't kill your depth as far as wide receiver.
If you're undefeated and you're stacked everywhere and you just want to, throw them at the end, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
I think
interesting to see how that plays out, though, Dylan. That may be a good call. It's hard for me to see it, but no, I know we're close to running out of time, so I'll go ahead and pivot over to Dustin. I believe this will probably be the person you were speaking of, and if not, correct me. But trap or treat Chris Godwin?
I think, Chris Godwin. I think this is a good one because he's been hurt, and I was just reading an article on Twitter today. Someone saying sell Chris Godwin in redraft. Mike Evans is clearly the man, and I disagree. So treat for me, Chris Godwin. If you can get him, gobble him up as we're getting closer to Thanksgiving. Gobble gobble. I love Chris Godwin's talent. I don't think there's any denying that that he's one of the more talented, physically gifted receivers in the league. And he's shown decent chemistry with Brady when he's been healthy. The biggest thing that concerns me with Godwin is his hamstring injury, right? I believe he's injured the same hamstring twice now this year. And we know soft tissue injuries tend to linger, especially, when speed is a big part of your game. The reason I don't think you should sell him and Mike Evans is the guy is that when Godwin is playing, he has more of a target share than Evans. So, yeah, Evans is looking like he's got a huge target share, but that's because every time Godwin has gone out, it's jumped from about 10% up to about 25, 30 in that range. So he's got a huge target share. He also has more – I forget how – there's this metric, right? It's based on how many yards you get is expected touchdowns. And for every 161 yards – or somewhere in that range, you can expect to score a touchdown if you're a wide receiver. Well, Mike Evans does not have a ton of yards, but he's got 3-4 touchdowns. I'm pulling up his card right now.
Those 2 receptions for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns helped.
Yeah, exactly. So he's outperforming in the touchdown area. So touchdown regression can be expected. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but it can be expected. And if Godwin comes back, he's taken a back seat, right? His target share dips down to 10% again, roughly in that area. And Godwin is holding more of a 17 to 20% target share now with OJ Howard gone. I would expect honestly them both to see a small increase, but Godwin to benefit more because now he's looking at a 20+% target share most weeks. Granted, he comes back. I think he will. They're winning. They're starting to figure some things out. Ronald Jones looked good on the ground. He had some drops, definitely, but he looked good running the ball. So I don't think this is one I don't think that they rush him back. But when he comes back, I think he's going to be a force for the rest of the season and the guy to own in that passing attack. So treat for me. King size treat if you can get him, in my opinion.
Right on. Where are you at, Dylan? Trap or treat? Chris Godwin.
Chris Godwin. I don't think he's terrible this year. I think, he's been dealing with a lot of injuries ever since the season kicked off, it seemed like. And, it's been a little bit of time necessary for the chemistry to really develop between Tom Brady and the other assets on that offense. I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards where Dustin's at as far as the injuries are. I think he might be a trap. I don't know if I'm really trying to buy in as far as, giving up a lot of cap, because I think you're probably not going to get him for nothing short of a lot of capital. And I think a lot of capital is not something I'm really comfortable giving up for Chris Godwin right now. I think which seems strange because, you could essentially say the same thing about A.J. Brown, who I'm super on board with fully. But I do think Chris Godwin presents something of an enigma as far as the rest of the season is concerned. If I was the Chris Godwin owner, I would probably be looking to maybe pivot to somebody else within the same range as him. Just because I don't know if the offense really itself is going to be fluid enough for Chris Godwin's opportunity share to be really meaty. I don't like. I think I think Rojo obviously gets a bad rap as far as pass catcher is concerned, and I think
he's not great at it.
He's not great at it. It's not going to be his forte. But I think as far as the offense itself is concerned, I don't know if I see it operating on all cylinders yet to really buy into Chris Godwin coming back and just killing it. And I have Julio shares in our dynasty league that us three are in, and it's the same thing. I think hamstrings are a big issue. I think soft tissue injuries in general are hitting people a lot harder than most folks ever even considered for this season. A lot of people worried about COVID IR spots, and I think for
the hamstring apocalypse out here.
They call them the hamstring spots because that's what it seems like a lot of people are going to have to deal with, and I think it's something that lingers. I think it's something that gets re-aggravated really easily, and I don't think anybody can question the extent to which Godwin's capable of being a wide receiver one, especially with him, Mike Evans, and everybody else operating on full capacity. It's just it unnerves me to a degree. And I think if I was the Godwin owner, I would probably look to, I'd look to pivot somewhere else. If you can convince, let me see here. If I could get the Tyler Lockett owner to give me Chris Godwin, that might be cool. Especially considering the week. Tyler Lockett just put up nothing this past week.
That's true. And I think he put up 40 or something.
He put up 40 the past week. And I think if you can buy the dip on Lockett after this week, because it's just like Carter bought Lockett for me in our dynasty league. I don't think that's going to rock his boat as far as enthusiasm for Lockett is concerned with his performance this week. But if there are owners in your league that maybe had Lockett and expected a shootout in Miami and didn't get it and might be a little bit on tilt because they lost because of a performance from Lockett, I would look to make that happen if I was the Godwin owner. I would pivot to somebody like a Lockett. If you can convince the Terry McLaurin owner, I'd probably pivot to him as well. I think there are anybody within that wide receiver 15 to 5 range, I think, is not a bad play for a Chris Godwin right now. Just because
I don't see any of those owners trading for an injured player, though. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, if you were a McLaurin owner, are you really trading him away for an injured Chris Godwin?
No, because he's been doing all right.
I think if you're out on the Washington offense, it's probably something you could make happen. Everybody hates Dwayne Haskins these days. Everybody says he's hot garbage, which I'm a Dwayne supporter. I want to see him play, but he's not
great. Peep McLaurin's numbers, man. That's all. I'm gonna leave it at that. Peep his numbers. Good quarterback.
They're not great. Yeah. So if you have somebody if there are tangential reasons for somebody in the same range to pivot, and you can get commensurate value for a Chris Godwin, I'd probably do that if I was a God. I don't think I have any Godwin shares in any of my leagues right now, so it's not easy for me to really speak on it from an ownership perspective. But I think if I did right now, considering the season he's played, and I don't know. There's really not a lot that points me towards saying I should be hesitant about him coming back and playing well beyond just really the hammy. But I've seen enough people get rocked from hammy issues right now that if they've lingered,
that's across the whole league, though. So
that is the whole thing. I think that's kind of a theme that draws together a lot of the pockets of buying and selling opportunities, just because there have been so many injuries lately to where there's almost an overwhelming amount of pivots that you could make if you're not satisfied where your roster's at right now. If you've lost a handful of games because you drafted Godwin early in the second round and he hasn't put out what you needed him to, you might be sour. You might not want him on your roster. You might be just out of the Godwin business. And if that was the case, I think it's worth floating that idea to the Galladay owner or I think the Keenan Allen owner. I think if you could.
Well, the Galladay owner, in all fairness, Galladay missed week 1 and 2, and then he goes on a bye this week. So essentially, same amount of games missed.
So it's a pivot, and I think if you come back, I think Galladay was kind of the exception because he was injured. He came back and he looked like he played fine. So there's always room for exceptions, but I think it is something that I just don't know if I'm on the Godwin board. It's just I was kind of out on him preseason, to be honest, as well. I didn't know. I never bought into the Bucs offense that much. I wasn't really a believer in the chemistry being developed quickly, considering there being no preseason, no any real opportunity for the offense to congeal together as far as an identity is concerned. So I just never really was much on the Godwin hype train whenever the season initially got rolling and all these injuries. I think he got a concussion too, didn't he? Didn't he get concussed in like week 2 or 3 at some point?
Yes.
Yeah. So beyond that, it's just like there's not been enough for me to pull the trigger on I'm fully out, but I'm not really in either. So I think I'm kind of have to pull a CEH. I have to pull a depends. If your roster looks like you could use a little bit of supplementary help and you're not bought in on Godwin, I'd probably make that pivot. But if you have enough people on your roster to where you don't really have to trip on your wide receiver depth too much, it's worth the hold unless you get an offer that really knocks your socks off. But otherwise, if you bought Godwin, you probably already sunk a lot of capital into him from the draft or gave a lot in a trade to get him. So, if you got him right now, I don't know if there's much action really that needs to be made. But if you get an offer that's worth pursuing to a degree, I don't think it's a bad idea to just look into it. So I'm not enough anywhere on either side to really move the needle that much. So I'd probably hold if I had him, if anything else.
Well, I'll make this real easy. This is the perfect time to buy Godwin. The perfect time. He sat out last week. He's not expected to play this week. They have a Thursday night game, I believe. Let me double check.
Well, no, you're right.
Yep, they play
Chicago. Yes,
Chicago.
they have a Thursday night game. I play to win, so I'm going to gamble that after this Thursday night game and that extra rest, he's going to be ready to go. Beyond that, in the 2 games that Godwin has played, week 1, 7 targets. Week 3, 6 targets. Mike Evans in each of those games, 4 targets only. Not to mention, Mike Evans is currently not practicing due to that ankle injury this past week.
Oh, yeah, he got hurt too, didn't he?
He did. He toughed it out.
This is the lowest Chris Godwin's value will ever be. Now, understand there's risk. Understand that. But should he return in week 6 and play the rest of the way, that could win you the league. It could win you the league. Assuming the person that drafted him is like struggling.
Which they probably are.
And, this is the perfect time. If your record is at least 2-2 or above, I'm going out and buying them on the low because more than likely that owner's record is not doing so well and they need immediate help. They're already hearing he's out another week. I'll take 1 week of him sitting on my bench and bank on him being, in my opinion, probably the receiver targeted most by Brady the rest of the way, assuming he's on the field. And to be honest, not to knock Mike Evans, his consecutive 1,000-year seasons, that's amazing. But just overall skills, I think Godwin hands down is a better wide receiver. I just do. And he plays in that position where Tom Brady just has this long history of looking to early and often. Chris Godwin is an elite player, and if you could send, I don't know, if you could send, to be very honest, and this might be, assuming I'm good at running back, I would send Jonathan Taylor for Chris Godwin. I really would.
Oh, yes.
I really would, because I don't trust Jonathan Taylor and their lack of receivers. It's risky. It could backfire. I acknowledge that, but I'm perfectly fine with Godwin missing this week 5. It's Thursday. He'll have those extra days. If he comes back and plays the rest of the way, you're probably going to win the league with that one move.
I think that's a really solid play, actually. And, yeah, I think if you can make that happen with the Jonathan Taylor – if you're the Jonathan Taylor owner and you've got the Godwin owner and he voices some displeasure with him in your group chat or something, that's probably a good buying opportunity just to get some value off the name alone.
Yeah, if you're stacked at running back and you need wide receiver help, I would make that move. I really would. I mean, you might not even have to give up Jonathan Taylor in all honesty, but I just wanted everyone to understand how much I value Godwin. I mean, realistically, you could probably James Conner. I mean, I don't like him being in my lineup, man. Just seeing the constant Q next to his name and just waiting for him to – I don't like that stuff. So
it's
I would
roller coaster, baby.
trade him.
Ride it.
I mean, I could name
if Mike Evans got injured, would that change the way you view Godwin in that role? I ask because –
I mean, I'm all in on Godwin either way.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
when they've both been on the field, Evans is an afterthought
is
from
plan
what
B.
the targets say.
Yeah, and Evans is already 4 touchdowns over expected touchdowns for the year, right? So his expected touchdown total is 1. He has 5. I don't see that continuing when Godwin comes back. Godwin's getting more targets.
Remember, props to Evans for battling through that injury and continuing to play this past weekend. Shout out to him. Godwin has been resting. Evans is now dealing with a new injury. Could Evans end up back out on the field? Sure. Could he pull what Julio just did this past weekend? 100% he could.
That's actually why.
So whether Evans is healthy or not, I mean, that doesn't even come into the equation for me. I just know that when Godwin is on the field, he's by far the best receiving threat that team has. And I know Tom Brady absolutely has to recognize that. So assuming, you have a winning record or at least are 2-2 and you can wait a week, go get him now, right now. And I would bet more than likely he'll be back come week 6. And assuming he stays healthy the rest of the way, could be a league winning move. It really could.
I would say I agree with you. And the only reason I bring up Mike Evans is just because I think there's a lot of correlation between Calvin Ridley and Chris Godwin. And we saw what happened last night when Julio was essentially eliminated from the equation. Defenses cued in on Calvin Ridley really hard, and they made it basically
Ridley
impossible.
Was injured,
Yeah, also, Calvin Ridley was a little bit hamstrung by injury coming into the game as well. But I do see a little bit of correlation between those two situations. So I think if anything were to happen to Evans, I might be a little bit concerned just with defenses maybe queuing in on Godwin a little bit harder, but maybe not enough to really dissuade anybody from which I think you probably have the most valid take on this, which is I think it is a really worthwhile buying opportunity, much akin to the A.J. Brown thing. If he's your bag and you're willing to maybe pay the value that the owner right now has or is wanting, I think it's worth pursuing. If you think Godwin is going to come out and he's going to put numbers on the board, which there's really nothing that says you won't, I think it's definitely worth buying. And like you said, I don't think you'll have to pay that much. You certainly won't have to pay the middle to early second round value that the Godwin owner probably had to pay to get Godwin initially. So yeah, if you can make it happen, if you can give would you give a Terry McLaurin for Godwin right now?
Nah, bro. McLaurin, I'm not – he's right there with Godwin except he's healthy, so I wouldn't do that. Just a couple final thoughts, and then I'm going to let Dustin close this out. Okay. So the similarities between Chris Godwin and Calvin Ridley, they are both elite route runners. Mm-hmm. The difference between Chris Godwin and Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin has produced at an elite level over the course of an entire season. Ridley has not.
Really? Did he not produce at an elite level last year?
He's had a good first couple of games. He's finished as wide receiver 24-ish. And then what did Godwin finish last year? It had to be top, 3, 4.
Yeah, it was something in that.
So I guess that's what I'm getting to. Calvin Ridley's had a very hot start. I would rather have Godwin. You know, assuming I know they're both going to be on the field, I'm choosing Godwin easily, like without thinking twice.
I would agree with you. I'd say if you can get out, if you have the Falcons, I would be a little bit nervous. I don't like what I've seen. I think last night was an alarm bell that the Falcons might not be as really solid offensively as everybody thought them to be. And if you are a Ridley owner, I don't think that's a terrible idea to go ask the Godwin owner what their thoughts are. I think you could probably even get
Godwin. You could get Godwin and some for Ridley.
Yes, you could
right
get Godwin
now.
plus.
That's the crazy part.
Right. You could get like Godwin in a back. You could get a Godwin and a Justin Jackson or Joshua Kelly right now, which I think if you can make that happen, I don't think that's a terrible idea. If you can get something for Calvin Ridley, I'd say do it. I think there's no better time than now. If you're not a fan of the Falcons offense, and from what I saw last night and just the course of the season so far, not really in on them right now. For what I'm seeing. So yeah, if you got a Calvin Ridley, if you own Calvin Ridley, you can kind of play that luster a little bit and get yourself a Godwin with a little cherry on top. I think that's a solid play, and I think you're kind of slacking if you're not making that move.
Still. So, Dustin, I know me and Dylan been going at it with this Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley talk. Gonna go ahead, hand the floor over to you, and let you finish us on out.
Yeah, man. The only thing I have to say about that is, in theory, that sounds great. You know, flip Calvin Ridley for Chris Godwin plus. The only thing that makes me hesitant about that is the number of targets that Calvin Ridley sees. We're talking 12 in week 1, 10 in week 2, and 13 in week 3. And that's just hard to replace, even with Chris Godwin. So that makes me a little hesitant, but I don't know, man. If I could flip it for like Chris Godwin and Jonathan Taylor, maybe?
Oh, bro, you stretching there.
Damn, you're probably going to have to give
I guess, have we even seen Julio Jones 100% this year? I don't know.
We have.
I don't know. Will we see him 100%? I don't know that either. If we do, I can't imagine Ridley continues to see the volume that he has. And in fact, Russell Gage has been quite impressive. Just saying.
Old Meaty was good last night.
Yeah.
It's just tough because it's kind of like that fear of missing out. It's like, man, it's like in the back of your mind, Calvin Ridley's value is probably at an all-time high. Well, I don't think he did shit this past week, but I think up there.
I think it's still high. I think it's still
up there.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to continue doing that the rest of the way? He could. He's talented. First-round draft pick, one of the best route runners in the league. I mean, he could.
I mean,
but for someone who hasn't done it yet,
I think he
will. And he's injured as well. That's the thing, is he is injured also. So
what is his injury?
It's an ankle injury. That's all I know.
I think he'll be able to play through that. I hope he can, because just listen to this upcoming schedule, my friends. Carolina, at Minnesota, Detroit, at Carolina. Then we have Denver. It's Denver at home, so who knows? Falcons at home. New Orleans, who haven't been stout on defense, and these divisional matchups are typically a track meet. Las Vegas, New Orleans again, the Chargers, and then we have Tampa Bay and then KC. That's a nice damn schedule if we expect them, to have to pass a lot like they do. That's a nice passing defense schedule.
Have they won a game?
No.
So let's say, fast forward, suddenly we're 0-8. These little nicks and, injuries,
sure,
but things that they would typically play through. Do you think that they would continue to do that? I don't. I think it might, at that point, why not tank for Trevor? Because Matt Ryan, unfortunately, he just looks different this year. I mean, he's still average. I'm not going to say he's like down at the bottom of the quarterbacks in the NFL or anything, but he just doesn't seem he seems to be aging, and it's quite obvious from what I've seen thus far. I'll just leave it at that. They have no defense. Again, Russell Gage has emerged. I mean, if Julio comes back healthy, I don't think we can count. If Julio is just not 100% and is on and off the field, then Ridley could ball if he's able to be alpha. He could. I would rather sell high and get something that I know is a proven asset, such as Chris Godwin playing on top, whatever that on top may be that helps my team. I don't know, man. The Falcons don't look good at all. I mean, the Cowboys got beating them in whatever week that was with that little helicopter kick. But I don't know, man. Panthers have looked better. I mean, it might come down to the Falcons, Jets, and have the Giants won? Falcons, Jets, Giants,
the Giants
Redskins.
have a win, don't they?
Do they?
I'm not sure. I thought they might have won week 1. No, they played Pittsburgh.
Well, anywho, thinking a little outside of the box, but I'm just, if we're halfway through the season and all the other teams have at least a tie on their record, and you're sitting over here with no wins and supposedly one of, if not the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck is coming out, I mean, I wouldn't want any, especially someone like Ridley who's still young and in his prime. I mean, if he has anything that's bothering him, I'm telling him, no, you're staying on the side. Come back next year.
At the same time, Dan Quinn is also coaching for his job. So,
bro, I think he lost his job. He lost his job like 2 seasons ago. So
hey, it's not over. He's got it till he's got it. And he's still got it. So, until then, he's coaching for his job. So I don't see him doing that as long as he's there.
Well, to be fair,
I also think he's the next coach fired.
Well, to be fair, even with him playing these star skill players, they still can't win. So,
I mean,
if you can't win either way, it's like, what are we really like? We're risking one of our best players getting injured when we've seen just countless people across the league get injured, much more so than any other season. I mean, if it gets to that point, I mean, again, this is just thinking rationally, which most coaches don't do for whatever reason. But
that assumption of rational coaching.
It'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Good conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Dylan, very glad to have you on and sharing your insight. We'll continue to battle it out in our leagues, and we'll certainly welcome you back in the near future. But I'll just hand it over to Dustin to close us out.
Sounds good.
Yeah, great episode. Lots of good discussion. Hopefully that helps. Some teams that are maybe 2-2, 1-3, struggling to start the season a little bit, find some value and right the ship and turn the season around. I feel like we could talk all day about 100 more players just because this season is wild. This is the wildest season I can remember. So. Hang in there. I have made playoffs after starting 0-4. So even if you're 0-4, work that waiver wire. You got to be picking players up every week. There's a million waiver wire articles, episodes out there. We touched on some of them, the big ones this week. But you got to work the wire. Don't give up hope. If you go 0-5, you're probably done. But
and don't forget. Take a calculated risk.
Yeah.
If your team struggled out the gate, instead of just shutting it down and throwing in the towel and just being salty about it, look into some stuff. Like forecast a little bit. See if you can pull off something that seems fair, but you're thinking, you know, the narrative is that this player, although he's not valued much now, he will become J.K. Dobbins possibly.
Yeah.
We'll save that for the next episode. But just wanted to add that. Comment. If you leave us a comment, tell us what you want to see. We'll reach out to you. If you'd like to collaborate, you're more than welcome. That's all here. That's all for me here. Dustin, you got anything else?
Very, very last thing. Redraft leagues have this terrible stigma about trading. Like, obviously, if I want to trade for your guy, I know something that you don't. Yeah, maybe, but also I could be taking one of these calculated risks, you know? The trading is so hard in redraft leagues, and it doesn't have to be. Get it out of your head that someone's always out to get you. Assess the trade fairly, and don't try and trade rape someone, because it doesn't work out for anyone, and it makes your league less fun, right? Yep. So get out there, make some trades if you're struggling. Even if you're at 4-0, look at some possible trades to make your team even stronger. Look at those. Go back and watch our playoff strength of schedule episode, and maybe target some guys who at the end of the season are going to give you a boost. You know, you always got to be playing, try to be playing chess and hope that the rest of your league mates are playing checkers. You got to be thinking a step ahead, and that's what we're trying to help you do here. So I hope you find some value out of this. It's always fun to record these. Thank you, Dylan, for coming on. We'll get your Twitter handle on down there in case anyone wants to follow your random ass thoughts on Twitter.
Yeah, if you have any trade questions, tweet at us.
Yeah, let us know.
Really, I mean, we'll give you our opinion, take it or leave it, but
yeah,
get at us and we'll get back to you for sure.
Yeah. We love trading. I pulled off some crazy trades already in this dynasty year. So get at us with that. Get at us with content you want to see. Otherwise, we're just going to keep pumping out stuff that we hope helps you. But other than that, man, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Everybody who views, comments, likes, follows us on Twitter. You guys are the best. Until next time, peace out.
Peace, y'all.